So yeah, my name is Nick Mortensen, and I am the Director of Development on the technology consulting team here at Eide Bailly. So I oversee a few different teams. We do everything from kind of traditional full stack web development to integrations work, Salesforce.com development, and robotic process automation, etc. And today I'm going to be talking a little bit about the connected business. It's been it's been something that we've been hearing more and more of, particularly in the past year and a half, with everything that's gone on with COVID. Organizations are really kind of looking to understand how they can use integration and process automation and some of the tools out on the market to make them more effective, especially with the changes, right? Like we've seen a lot of change, and how does this new norm, how do we make it more efficient? So anyways, we've seen a lot of traction and a lot of interest and a lot of questions in this space. So the agenda, I'm going to talk a little bit about why you guys should even care about a connected business and automation. We're going to talk about how it can add value, about the importance of being fast and agile, the increased accuracy that's gained from automation. We're going to have a few tips and tricks on things that you should be taking into account or thinking of when doing an integration or an business process automation type project. And then I've got some case studies that I like to go over. One of them is a demo. So I do have a pre-recorded demo that I'd like to show you of something that we were able to build. And then I have a couple other case studies, and we can fill the remaining time with that questions when we get to the end. So, all right. So why we care. So I kind of briefly talked about this, but we've seen a huge uptick in the interest in the automations and integration space. This isn't a new space. There's been a lot of interest in it for a long time. And really what it comes down to, there are three main business challenges that executives are trying to address. First, manual processes that lead to errors, consume too much time. They're not fun for employees to do, right? We're always trying to get rid of those. We're trying to do fewer of those, make our business smoother, more scalable, et cetera. That's nothing new. With the advent of the cloud, we have moved away from the monolithic, Oracle application where Oracle provides everything you could possibly need, for example. We're moved away from that to a best of breed cloud-based approach where I've got Salesforce for CRM, NetSuite or Microsoft for an ERP, and I've got a very niche marketing software and a very targeted warehouse management system, right? Well, with the advent of the cloud and all these different best of breed softwares, that also means that your data is stored in all these different places. All right, so kind of when I first kind of started out my career, I went and did a stint at USAA. And when I was there, I was doing a large integrations project. That's what it was called. And essentially what I was doing was moving data from one database to another, right? Both databases were in like USAA's data center, right? They owned them, they were there. I was just moving data back, like taking it from here and putting it there. That was it. It was just a straight like extract the data, transform it, load it here. That was all I had to do. But now things are a little bit different, right? That was the traditional way of kind of thinking of integration or ETL was, hey, I'm just mass moving data. It's pretty simple, right? Map the data and transform it to make the right outcome. Well, integration this day and age is a little bit different. We're talking about business process, right? We've got a process that starts in one system and ends in another. And so how do I make sure that that business process is streamlined, right? So the advent of the cloud has created a business challenge of, right, we've got these fragmented systems, fragmented processes. How do we tie them all together? How do we make that a better experience for our employees, for our customers, et cetera. And then lastly, the big elephant in the room, COVID has just flat out changed our work environments. When this, basically what happened, we had 3 years worth of digital transformation and digitization efforts that were forced upon businesses in a 3-month time frame, right? We had to go from being, for the most part, in an office next to our coworkers to being completely remote very, very quickly. And the challenges that presented were very real and very tangible for a lot of customers, hence, right, the big uptick. And with today's day and age and the job market the way it is, right, we're seeing a whole bunch of things happen. But one of the things that's happening is we're realizing this is, for a lot of places and a lot of people, this is kind of the new norm, right? This remote distributed workforce. We saw things like, companies and people in California and New York and these really expensive places to live kind of flooding out and moving to places that were much more affordable, like Idaho, right? Like Boise, Idaho has seen like the highest growth numbers in the entire country, right? We've seen people just kind of flood these more rural markets, and our workforce has become very distributed. And so when we were all in an office together, we could get away with a lot of stuff that no longer keeps the boat afloat when we're separated by state boundaries, right? It just is a very different work environment. And this right-hand column here with the desired outcomes, this is something that was pulled directly from Gartner. So Gartner interviewed a bunch of executives and was kind of asking these executives, hey, as you invest in automation, what are you looking to get out of that investment? And these are the things that they came up with. So first was an improved employee experience. We all know that the job market is just a little bit insane right now. And whatever you can do to differentiate yourself as an employer is extremely important right now. You want to make sure that your work environment is good for your employees. And so a lot of what we as consultants have been asked to do is things to make the lives of their employees better. Follow closely with that is making the customer experience better, right? It shouldn't be hard for the customer to engage. It needs to be easy. It shouldn't be hard for the customer to purchase a product or purchase our services. It needs to be easy. So how do we make it easier? How do we improve that experience? We're also seeing a lot of compliance tasks that we're doing. So for example, making sure that the use of some of these government funds that are being issued, that they're being used correctly, they're being spent properly, that we're compliant with whatever we need to be compliant with. Automation can help a lot with compliance, and also it can make us a lot more efficient, right? So people are looking for just, I want to do this better, right? I want to do faster. I want to do more with less. The number one contributor to bad data is us, humans, right? And so people are looking for ways to reduce our error rate because data is extremely important. How do we make sure that we keep our data clean? Automation is a great way of doing that. And then, right, one of the things that executives have pulled out there that Gartner pulled out was reducing their workforce, right? Being able to scale and grow without having to hire more people. The reality of it is very, very uncommon to actually reduce workforce with automations. What usually happens is you're able to scale without having to hire somebody else, or the people that you have are repurposed and asked to do more effective things with their time. And so I didn't want to change Gartner's words, and so I left it in there as Gartner stated it, but that's where that came from. And yeah, the reality of it is you're usually not reducing. But anyways, everything that's gone on, we've seen 3 years worth of digital transformation that was really forced upon these businesses in a matter of months. And that caused some real stresses in the environment. And the companies that have been able to deal with it well have really, really, really excelled. The companies that haven't have struggled significantly. And so it's kind of not even really become an option anymore. If you want to stay relevant and if you want to thrive in the new environment that exists, people are recognizing I've got to invest more in automation. And so that's kind of what I'm going to be talking about is what can automation do for you and your company, your department, and how do we go about getting that automation in place? So obviously all of this is, we're trying to add more value. There's a little bit of a misnomer that robots are going to take over all of our jobs, right? Every once in a while I run into that where it's like, people are hesitant or push back on the implementation of new technologies, kind of, for fear of losing their jobs. And the reality of the matter, the reality of the situation is we're pretty dang far from something like that being realistic. The entire goal of what we are doing with automations, integrations, process orchestration, etc., we're trying to automate the mundane and repetitive parts of our job so that we, as the skilled humans that were hired, can spend our time doing the things that skilled humans do best. That's what we're trying to do. Free up our time so we can focus on more effective things, more higher value add activities. And these technologies that we have, I mean, they're really here to help us. They're here to enable us. The role of technology is an enabler or an effort enhancer, right? So technology is frankly going to magnify our decisions, whether they be good or bad, right? If you make a really poor decision or have a really poor process, technology and the use of those tools, frankly, is going to make it worse really fast. It's going to highlight the issues that you have in your business process, right? A great example is bad data, right? If I have an automation in place that's moving, what's a good example? It's moving an email address from like a marketing system, right? We've collected this lead and it's moving that email address into a customer relationship management software, right? If our marketing tool was set up poorly and we're collecting email addresses that are invalid and our CRM is verifying and stopping us from being able to upload or import a record that has a bad email address, right? If I'm manually doing it, no big deal. I can see it, I can fix it, I can get rid of the record, whatever. But as soon as I automate it, it's going to break every single time it gets to an email address that's invalid or malformed or incorrect, right? And now all of a sudden, I've just made the problem worse because I've tried to do a bad thing faster, right? And one of either it's going to break or worse is, hey, the CRM allows bad data to come in, and now I'm just pumping bad data into my system even faster. That's going to break my reports and throw off, waste salespeople's time, etc. So, I mean, the role of technology is really to enable, right? It's meant to help us fix or solve very specific or certain problems. And so the way I structured my team is maybe a little bit different. And I think it's important for companies to kind of view the world through the same lens. These different automation technologies that exist, these are all just tools, right? And it's very intuitive to us. It makes a lot of sense. Like nobody here would grab out of this pile a screwdriver and run around the house trying to find all the problems they can fix with a screwdriver. That doesn't make sense. That's not the way we operate. We have a problem in our home, something that needs to be fixed or something that's broken. We take that broken thing and we go out to our workbench. We analyze the problem and we figure out the right tool for the job. We figure out the right tool that we need to use to address that problem. Then we take that right tool out of the workbench, we use it to solve our problem, and that's the most efficient, that's the best way to do it. And it sounds so silly coming out of my mouth because like, well, yeah, Nick, of course, that's how we would approach the problem. But we haven't adopted that same mindset to technology yet, right? I think there's too much of this hope or idea that, hey, this piece of technology, right? It's a game changer. It is the silver bullet that's going to magically cure all of my woes. That's just not the way it is. There are a whole bunch of different technologies. They all have different strengths and weaknesses, and they do different things. And based on the problem that you are trying to solve, you need to pick the right tool. You need to pick the right technology. If you're not familiar with what tools are available, you should probably find somebody that understands to help you out, right? It's the same way if you had a problem with your house and you didn't know how to fix an electrical issue, you'd call an electrician, right? It's the exact same way. There are people that dedicate a lot of time to understanding the technologies that are out there, how they can help you, and how you can leverage them. And it's usually in your best interest to give somebody like that a call. So this was taken straight out of Gartner. Gartner has coined a term called intelligent automation. It's an umbrella term meant to encompass the different technologies that you could use to help intelligently, right, automate business processes. We got everything from very task-based stuff on the left-hand side with RPA to very like enterprise high-level, process orchestration type stuff on the right-hand side. Today, I'm going to be talking about two in particular. I'm going to be talking about robotic process automation, RPA, and integration platforms as a service, iPaaS. These are the two technologies that right now we are seeing the most traction, far and away. It's kind of not even close. These two technologies right now are the main technologies that are solving the majority of people's problems that they've encountered with COVID, the remote workforce, and the need to just make things a little bit more efficient. These are the two technologies. So those are the ones that I'm going to be focusing on. So along the same lines, we have, so I also run a development team. And there's, frankly, if I'm being totally honest, my development team can do everything that a robotic process automation tool or an integration tool can do. We can do all of it. And we have more control. We can be more precise. We can build it exactly tailored to your needs. And if that's the case, right, we've got all these developers out there in the marketplace that can do this work. Why do we need these tools? And the main answer to that question is agility. It's speed. It's the return on investment. And I'm going to talk on that in just a second. So just kind of hold on to that. I'm going to talk a little bit about specifically integrations in RPA, what they are, what is an iPaaS? What is integrations? Why is it important? What is RPA? I'm going to talk about that real quick, and then we're going to dive right back into agility. So integrations. Data is often referred to as the lifeblood of your business, right? It is commonly acknowledged now that the data that you own as a company is worth more than your actual business. If you think about all of the big companies right now, what are the big companies that come to mind? We've got Facebook, Google, Amazon, Apple, right? Like these are the big companies in America. What do all of those companies run off of? They all are based on data, the collection and selling of data, right? The information that you can pull out of data is incredibly important, and that's why analytics is such a hot topic right now in the marketplace. people are understanding the value that analytics and analyzing data can bring. Well, if data is the lifeblood of your business, integrations, that's your heart, right? A good integration is not just connecting two systems. A good integration is a system whose job is to pump data throughout your entire application ecosystem. So think of your heart, right? The heart's job is to pump blood to all the different muscles and organs in your body so that they have the oxygen and the nutrients that they need to perform their jobs. Well, that's exactly what an integration is doing. Its job is to take data and push it to all the different applications throughout your application ecosystem at your business so that those apps, those applications can do their job and have the data that they need when they need to do their when they need it. That's what an integration is. There's still a little bit of that old school mentality of like, hey, we're just, we're just moving data from here to there. That's not what integrations are anymore, right? It's connected systems. It's the free flowing of data so that business processes can flow in uninterrupted, so that analytics can be done with accurate data from all systems involved. Robotic process automation. This is RPA is something that has been, I don't want to say overhyped, but it has been marketed like crazy. A lot of people think RPA is kind of that silver bullet that's going to cure all of a company's technological woes. And that's just, nothing can do that, right? The same way, going back to that example, I could have the greatest set of tools in the world on my workbench. I could buy the nicest tool in the world, and it is completely useless without my input. It is completely useless without the ability of a human to find a problem, to diagnose the problem, and then to use the tool correctly. All right. It is the exact same way with technology. You could buy the best piece of technology on the planet. And if you're not accurately identifying a problem, if you're not accurately diagnosing the solution to that business problem, and if you're not using the tool in the right way, you're not going to get the return out of it that you could. And anyways, RPA has been marketed to the point where people, a lot of people really do believe it's just it solves all their problems. 9 out of every 10 calls that I get on that are for RPA, we have to use a different technology to solve the business problem. And that's okay. That doesn't matter, right? Like, frankly, kudos to the companies that were able to identify the fact that there was a problem in the first place. And, it was great that they pulled in somebody to help figure out what the right tool is. Robotic process automation is very specific, right? Automation, process automation, and integration, that happens quite a bit already. And I'm sure you guys have all heard of APIs. APIs are they're everywhere now, right? They're kind of becoming standard for certainly for any new company. And most older companies are developing APIs to enable the transfer of data between their system and others. But what happens when you don't have an API for a certain process? How do I automate a process if I don't have an API? Well, that's kind of where Power Automate comes in. Power Automate is a Microsoft's version of robotic process automation, right? You've also got like UiPath, Blue Prism, Automation Anywhere, right? Like, there's a lot of players in this space. Power Automate's just the one that we use because it's very accessible. It's easier for our clients, but I'm not going to go down that path. The point is, that's where RPA comes in. RPA's job is to kind of bridge the gap, right? A very common example is QuickBooks. QuickBooks, if I've got like the enterprise version of QuickBooks installed on my desktop, there are some problems with integration because it doesn't have all of the APIs that a traditional, or not traditional, a more modern ERP like Dynamics or NetSuite would have, right? Well, how then do I automate the process of like, getting invoices into QuickBooks, or, having sales orders automatically be created when my sales team makes a sale. How do I get that to happen if I don't have APIs? Again, that's where Power Automate comes in. I've got old paper processes, PDFs. RPA, its job is to imitate a human and gathering information that's not available via kind of the traditional integration means. It's not available via an API. It's not available via, right, like a CSV file or something like that. How do I get data off of a PDF, right? How do I automate getting data off of this like old antiquated government website? That's where RPA comes in. All right, fast and agile, right? Why don't we just have developers do this? Because we want to be faster and more agile than that. And that's what these tools allow us to do. A while ago, I got into boxing and I thought, hey, I'm an athlete. I should be great at this. I should pick it up. No problem. I was terrible and it drove me absolutely nuts. I was really bad. And the problem was I was trying to throw this giant like haymaker like you see in the movies, this big knockout punch. When in reality, boxing isn't about power. It isn't about that one big play, that one big move, that one big punch. It's about speed, quickness, agility, balance, right? That's what makes a good boxer. You think of the greatest boxer of all time, most people recognize that's Muhammad Ali, right? And his mantra, motto, whatever you want to call it, right? Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Not hit like a hedgehammer, right? Float it like a butterfly, be light on your feet, be able to be light on your feet, right? Sting like a bee. You want to be boom, it's fast, right? You're quick, you're agile. And this is one of my favorite pictures because it shows just so perfectly what made him so great. You've got an opponent on the left that's thrown that big, huge punch. They swung and they missed. And guess what? They are completely vulnerable. Muhammad Ali was light on his feet. He was able to position himself in such a way where he remained balanced. And now he's able to take advantage of the opportunities that have been presented to him, right? You got a rib cage and the side of the head completely open. Balance, agility, speed, that's what it grants us. It grants us the ability to react to the market and take advantage of the opportunities that the market is going to give us. And the market is changing faster now than it ever has, right? So you look at the S&P 500. In 1920, the average company had been around for 67 years. Today, the average company in the S&P 500 has existed for 15 years. Why are companies popping up and dying out so much faster? It's because change is happening faster than ever. In order to survive in today's market, you have to change, you have to adapt, you have to innovate, improve, and evolve, right? You have to be able to take advantage of what's happening in the market. And the market's moving faster and faster and faster. So if you're not quick, if you're not able to quickly adapt to what happens, you're going to get left behind. Somebody else is going to take advantage of the opening that you left by not being fast enough to adapt. Anyways, yeah, I'm going to move on to the next slide. What these tools provide, how these tools make it so we can develop so much faster or build these automations so much faster, they offer low code interfaces, right? They allow us to develop via graphical interfaces instead of physically typing out like methods, curly brackets and semicolons and all that stuff that you see developers like pounding out on their keyboard. Instead of having to do all that, I can drag and drop. I can click a button, right? That's what low code is offering to us. That development via a graphical interface allows us to build things significantly faster, and it allows regular business people to be able to do a lot of this, right? That doesn't mean it's easy and anybody can do it, right? You still have to be technically inclined. However, You don't have to be a developer anymore to build a lot of these automations. And that's really where the power comes in with a lot of these tools, is taking the power of business logic, taking it away from developers and away from IT and putting it back in the hands of business users, analysts, and admins, right? The people that are close to the business that truly understand the problems that need to be solved. They are now be able to solve the problem themselves instead of having to write up spec, send it to a developer that's completely removed. That developer does his or her best job of figuring out how to solve the problem, right? It gets sent back. There's changes that need to be made. You go in the cyclical thing, right? An admin can go knock out something in a day that would take a month when put into the traditional development process. And you think that's like an exaggeration. Those are legitimate numbers. I was working with a company in Utah, venture backed, and there was an admin there that had been trying for over a month to get IT to build this integration form, to get data from their custom backend system. This was a software as a service company, data from that system into their CRM for sales operations and insight. He hadn't been able to get it. He hadn't been able to finish that because, right, he writes up the spec, he sends it. They were still mid-process. He got access to one of these low-code tools. He happened to be a pretty technical person. He got in and over the weekend was able to build what he had been trying for over a month, trying to get his IT team to deliver. Because he was close to the business, he knew the requirements. Every time he ran into an issue, he was able to make a judgment call right then and there because he understood the business to fix the issue, make it do what he needed it to do instead of trying to reconvey his thoughts to a person removed. They do their best job, right? And you go in that cyclical process to get where you need to go. Anyway, that's what these tools are offering, is that low code environment. So what does that mean to you guys as a business? It means that when you are paying for these tools, you need to you need to get brought up to speed, right? If you are paying for, let's use Microsoft for example, right? You're using Microsoft Power Automate. So many people will hire us to come in and build out their solution, and they expect, like, okay, like I'm done. Like you came in, you built it, and now kind of they expect us to just like fade away. And then they're really frustrated when they constantly need to reach back out. You need to take ownership of this. If you are hiring a company like us, or like if you work with Ide Bailey, get Ide Bailey to train you, right? Like we want to enable you, whoever your partner is. It doesn't have to be us, right? Or if there is no partner, if you're buying directly from Microsoft, tell them, I have somebody that needs to learn this. So what courses, what training materials, what do you have to bring my resource up to speed, right? And it doesn't matter who you're, what any software company, when they hear you saying that, they're going to be excited. They're going to engage because, kind of like I was saying at the beginning, you buy the best tool in the world. If you try and use a screwdriver as a hammer, it's not going to work terribly well. Doesn't matter how nice of a screwdriver you buy. And so these companies that are selling these softwares, they want you to do that too. They want you to understand how to use tools that you have purchased so that you can implement well, you can really realize the benefit. It benefits them because now you're hooked on the tool, right? So I guess coming full circle, work with a partner, not just to get stuff up and off the ground, but to actually get trained. If you don't have a partner, work with the vendor to make sure that you get the vendor trains you or provides materials for you to get yourself trained. And if it's the latter, where they're just giving you materials and a slap on the butt and a good luck, I'd strongly suggest talking to a partner or a professional, somebody that does it, so that you can, even if it's just for like escalations, right? Architectural reviews, stuff like that, it's worth its weight in gold. I have a project right now that we're working on where they did a great job, right? They were excited about the technology. They went in, they built a whole bunch of stuff, and then they realized, oh my gosh, every once in a while it's not working, and I didn't know about it. How long has this not been working? How much stuff just magically is disappearing from this process because I didn't realize it was breaking? And that's an architectural mistake, right? And somebody who's been through the ringer or does this for a living, I've been there, I've done that. I know you don't ever build something that fails silently. That's like the biggest mistake you can make in automation. You always build something that fails gracefully but never fails silently, right? Like that's just one example of many things, right? But the point being that that expertise is really going to help you when you're initially getting things set up so you don't start off on the wrong foot and end up with the poor experience. All right, so another huge benefit that automation brings to the table is accuracy, right? It makes us significantly more accurate. A computer never makes mistakes, right? It just doesn't. Humans have a very unique value, right? What makes humans unique is our pattern recognition, right? The ability to recognize, process, and act off of a perceived pattern. That's what makes humans so incredibly smart. Here's a great example. You may have seen this before or done this before, but bear with me. It's a very simple math problem. Do this in your head. Don't write anything down. Take 1,000. Now add 40. Now add another 1,000. Add 30. Add another 1,000. Now add 20. Now add another 1,000. Then add 10. And for those of you that were following along, you got to 5,000, right? Wrong. Most of you got to 5,000. According to statistics, about 75% of you got to 5,000, but that's not the right answer. The right answer is 4,100. What happened? Your brain identified a pattern. You weren't trying to, it's just what our brains do. It identified a pattern and it sent that pattern to a different part of the brain, right? If you cut the brain in half, right, you'll have the neocortex, that's a big part on the outside. That's the part of the brain that recognizes patterns. It's very energy hungry, right? It consumes a lot of power, a lot of energy to use that part of our brain. So its job is to identify the patterns. As soon as it identifies the patterns, it offloads it to a different part of the brain that's much more efficient. And so as soon as that pattern is identified, it gets offloaded and you get into that like habitual, right? You fall into a routine. You start following the pattern subconsciously, which that's the reason why we have that phenomenon when you're like driving and all of a sudden, oh my gosh, I'm on autopilot. I'm driving to work instead of driving to the gym or, driving to take my kid to soccer practice or whatever. That's what's happening. Your brain identified a pattern and just went into like autopilot mode, right? Humans, our brains, we're inherently very lazy. That's maybe that's not the right word choice. Our brain tries to be as efficient as possible. So as soon as that pattern is identified, it offloads it to a different part of the brain, and we follow that pattern subconsciously, which most of the time works in our favor. But how does that affect us when we're trying to do routine data entry or we're trying to do some super repetitive manual process? We go into autopilot mode. We're no longer thinking. We're no longer processing what we're doing, and that leads to mistakes. Humans are the #1 contributor to bad data, and robots don't do that, right? A robot will never do what it hasn't been told, right? Humans have a lot of soft logic that's happening up here, right? Everything is hard logic for a computer. It is black or it's white. It is 1 or it's a 0. It's true or it's false. There's nothing in between. And so it does that type of repetitive work. Like that's exactly what a computer was meant to do. So when we're looking at automation, repetitive, mindless stuff, the key there is repetitive, right? It's going to happen a lot of times. That's what we want to give to the computer. That's where computers add value because humans add value on the non-repetitive, the unique, the corner cases. That's where we're going to add the most value. All right. My company is a managed services provider. My customers are small to mid-sized businesses, and we generally are their IT department or an augmentation of their IT department. One of the biggest struggles that we have is cost effectiveness. I'd love for them to run more efficiently, but I'm afraid that cost is always going to be a problem. Is there a good ROI for the SMB market? We have a hard enough time keeping them up to date in computer infrastructure. That is a great question. That is a big part of Lance. That's a big part of why we like the Microsoft RPA product. There's a bunch of tools out there. Frankly, there are better tools, like more capable tools out there. You know, UiPath, Blue Prism, and Automation Anywhere. Those are widely recognized as the three best RPA, robotic process automation tools on the market, but they're expensive. Microsoft is already embedded in a very high percentage of our companies, right? They're already in there. And some of this functionality is baked in and available without any additional licensing costs, right? So I can use it right now to automatically sort through emails, post in Teams, manipulate an Excel document. I can use Power Automate to do that right now, no additional cost if I'm on the platform, right? So then the only real cost is your time in getting up to speed. If you want to bump up to the premium version, right? Because the free version is limited in what it can do. It's the whole freemium model, right? If you want to bump up to a better version, and I don't work for Microsoft, I just am a believer in what they've done, right? If you bump up to their premium model, it's $40 a month per user, right? So not the licensing cost is frankly, that's pretty small in the world of technology, right? I am used to dealing in the mid-market, small SMB, small and mid-market. I'm used to dealing with like $15,000 to $40,000 a year is normal for licensing for a lot of these technologies. And so to come in at $40 a month, I mean, that's really expensive, and you can do month to month, so you can try it out for a couple of months to see, hey, is this getting me the return that I want? And then it's just either the cost of getting somebody to do a proof of concept, a partner like iBailey to do a proof of concept, or some training, and then you build it out yourself. But there are very relatively easy ways to dip your toe in the automation waters and evaluate the return on investment. Hopefully that was helpful, Lance. If not, let me ask a clarifying question. I'd love to talk about it more. So we're running up on time, and I do want to make sure at the very least I show you, I have a 5-minute demo. But here are 4 quick tips on automation. First, you're really talking about process, whether it be integrations or RPA, whatever it is, we're talking about automating a business process. That process either already exists or you need to create it, but you're really talking about process. And so get the appropriate stakeholders in the room to flush out the process. That's probably the most common mistake that we run into is you've got somebody who's removed from the actual process trying to automate something because they're technical. And that's the quickest way to paint yourself into a corner. Get the actual business stakeholders that are involved and own the business process. They're the ones that are going to help you figure out how to do the automation. Document it, right? Once you get those people in the room, everybody thinks they know the process, and undoubtedly people disagree. My favorite one is quote to cash, right? This is probably the most common integration process automation that we do. It's when I close something in my sales system, so my customer relationship management system, I close a deal, I need that to automatically flow into my accounting software. I don't want to manually type in every deal. Well, undoubtedly, when we kick off the project, I get a VP of sales and a CFO or the lead controller in a room, and we hash out the process, and those two people never agree, right? You've got a salesperson whose job it is to like fly by the seat of their pants, and you've got a CFO who, if they're trying to fly by the seat of their pants, they shouldn't be your CFO, right? They undoubtedly clash. And so getting them in the same room and making them physically document what the process is going to help a ton when you get to actual development. I kind of mentioned this already, but identify your admin. Figure out who needs to own the solution once it's built, right? And ideally, it's not somebody on IT, it's somebody close to the business. Have them, if possible, be involved in the project. So like when we do projects, we do what we call enablement, where we will train somebody on your team fold them into our project team so they're getting tasks to help build out the solution, so that when we're done with the project, not only are they familiar with what's been built, but they know how to maintain it because they've been involved from day one. So something like that, identify who that person is, who's going to maintain it up front, and have them as involved as possible. And lastly, don't underestimate the importance of bringing somebody in. It really is helpful to have somebody who knows what they're doing. It'll save you a lot of time beating your head against a wall when somebody can just tell you, nope, don't do it that way, do it this way. So yeah, obviously you can totally do it yourself as well, but there's a value at times to bringing in an expert. The two main parts people are going to struggle is the initial architecture, which I kind of referred, right? Like, hey, have you thought about a naming convention? Have you thought about like a folder structure? Or have you thought about an error handling framework, right? Those are not things that you typically think of, but when you talk about an automation, 80% of its life is in maintenance mode. The first 20% is in the active build. And after that, it's just maintaining what's been built, right? And so by skimping out in that first 20% and not building it well, not thinking about those things, you make the maintenance portion, which is the remaining 80% of that automation's lifespan, more difficult. And then closely related to that is governance, right? The ongoing maintenance and modification of what you built. How do you do that the right way? That's often where people start to run into issues, because, man, I'll tell you what, this automation stuff, it's like crack, right? Like you get your first little sample and you're hooked, right? It's, you get into a business and you automate something for somebody, and then it just spreads like wildfire, right? It's like, oh man, that was so nice. What about this? Can you do that same thing over here? What about this other process, right? When you see the savings and you see what it's able to do for you, it's pretty incredible how quickly those things catch on. How do you make sure that you're working on the right things, that you're doing the highest value add activities first? That governance framework is really important because it can become very overwhelming very quickly, and it can become a total spider web of stuff that's not strung together, and it becomes really difficult to maintain. So anyways, those are the two parts where, like, you know, that's usually where a professional or an expert's going to help out the most: the initial build, and then help with ongoing governance, understanding how to do that process. So we got a little bit of time left. I want to show you guys a super quick demo. Amy's got a video. Amy, if you want to pull that up, this is a pre-recorded demo. Everything that's about to be shown is public data, publicly available. I've verified that nothing private is being shown here. But essentially what we've got is a process that takes a state about 1,000 man hours a year. We've completely automated it. And so we've gone from requiring about 1,000 hours a year to requiring maybe 5 or 10 hours a month of value add work, right? And everything else has been automated. So Amy, if you want to go ahead and play it, we'll dive into this.
Perfect. Yep. Thank you, Nick. Okay, so I'm just first going to show you what the manual process would currently be like. So you'd have to navigate to this Federal Audit Clearinghouse website. Here you would enter some search information. I've already entered the year and the EIN, and then you would search. And then you have to click through some acknowledgements. Okay, and then you'd get a record. And you would have to come down here and download that record. And then this is that record is the audit file. You'd come into the audit file. This is an example audit file. And you would have to search through this entire schedule. This one's not very large, but sometimes these can be quite large. And you would be searching for specific items. You'd be searching for every major program, and then you'd be pulling out relevant data related to that program. And so this would have to be done for hundreds of entities. And if it's not there the first time you search, you have to continue doing this week over week until a report is actually submitted. So it becomes quite a agonizing, tedious process. So I'm just gonna, so now to start, all you have to do is create a list. Our automation starts with just a list of the audit reports I want to run. So here, this is my list. I've populated 3 audit reports I want to run. And then I can just push run on my automation and it will run. I've recorded the automation running, so you're just going to see me push play on the video, but I've pushed play on, or I've pushed go on my automation, and you'll start to see Excel's open and close, and it'll run through the automation. So here is that first list. It's pulled that up, it's stored that data, and it's ready to search. So it's going to pull up some the website here quickly. This is the report file. You can see it's got a little bit of dummy data in there. It'll start adding data below those lines. Okay, yeah, it's back to the website. It's ready to search for our first item. It's going to enter in that information for me, search for it, click through. It's found a record. It recognizes it's found a record. And so it's going to download it and save it to a specific location for me. Okay, so now it's going to record what happened. It records that it found a file and it was able to download it successfully. And now it's going on to the second file. Again, it's entering all the information it needs. It's going to click through. Again, it's found a record. In addition to downloading this record, down here at the bottom, these dates, it's pulling some of these dates. These dates do not show up in the audit report, but they are important for monitoring purposes. And so it's storing those dates and it will add them to our file. Okay, and here is our last file. And this one, it's going to go through the same process of searching, but this time it will not find an audit report. So this one has not been submitted yet. So it recognizes it didn't find a file, so it's automatically going to search for the prior year to see if there was a file last year. This helps the team know how to follow up. Just gives them a little bit more data as they monitor. Okay, so it found a file for last year, so it's recorded that. Now it's going to go in and it's going to read all of our downloaded files and pull out those items. You can see that's opened the first file. And it's going to add them to the bottom of this report. Again, there's some dummy data in here, but it's starting to add all the major programs that it's pulling out of those reports. It's finished looking through those reports, and now it has finalized this report. The last part of the automation that I want to show is that it sends an email. I didn't record that in the recording, but if we go to my email, you can see where it sent me the report this morning when I ran it. And I'll just go over a little bit of that report. So again, we start here on the audit log. These are the 3 files we searched for. It's let me know what happened so I can troubleshoot or know what I need to follow up on. Here, it has added from the 2 files we were able to download, it's gone in and pulled out all the major programs and the relevant information. So it's got CFDA numbers, report types, findings, dates. These dates are from the website that we pulled down. And it's summarized them all into this quick, nice, easy report. So I can easily see these 2 I didn't find files for. Some of this is dummy data, but this is the one we searched for. We didn't find a file for. It's added it. I know I'll need to follow up on these lists or research for them later. And then I can also see quickly what I need to see to make my management decision. I can see findings, changes in qualified opinions. So
Awesome. So hopefully this helps kind of put into context what is happening with RPA, right? Like as a human, I would sit in front of a computer. I would use my mouse and my keyboard. I would physically have to do this. I'd have to navigate to the website, click on the buttons, download the file, go through the file, pull out the information, and put it in like a consolidated report so that I could deliver it to management so that management can look at it and make some decisions. That's what a mindless waste of time. Like that's not a value add thing for a human to do, right? And so we've literally programmed the computer to kind of take over, right? The computer now, essentially what's happening is it's hijacking the mouse and the keyboard, clicking on things, typing stuff in, doing the process for you, taking the information, putting it into cell. Like this is the sort of thing, it just runs overnight. Like you're gone and it just goes and it checks all the different audits that you've put in that initial file. It completely automates a process that traditionally, right, there's no API to do this. There's no way to automate it. It has to just manually be done. And that's where these robots come in, right? And so anyways, I wanted to show you guys because sometimes I talk about this stuff and it's super like abstract and it's a conceptual thing. And hopefully this helped you understand, hey, this is how it operates. Like it's literally the same as me sitting there with a computer, right? Moving a mouse and a keyboard. It does that for me. So anyways, that is all that I had prepared for today. We had to run through the demo pretty quickly. I have other examples and use cases and stuff like that, but really just to kind of wrap it all up and summarize, right? In the nature of the environment that our businesses are running in has changed. And in order to keep our employees happy and efficient, or our customers happy, we have to do more with automation than we used to. And not all of our systems or processes are going to be compatible with the modern way of automation and integration. Not all of us have big, robust, right? Like Lance pointed out, right? A lot of us, we're going to struggle with cost effectiveness. We can't drop 25 grand a year on an integration tool. It doesn't make sense. And half our systems aren't even going to connect to it because they don't have an API, or I can't get a report out of it automatically. That's the ideal state, right? Having the good systems and stuff like that. But the reality is that's not always the case. Well, we have this robotic process automation that bridges the gap between the old and the new. It allows us to still have a connected business without having to make those big, huge, expensive investments. There is a cost-effective way to bridge the gap. And then as far as like tips and tricks go, right? Make sure that you're setting it up correctly from the get-go, and that you're enabling somebody on your team to take over the maintenance of it, because that's really where the value is going to come from, is putting the power of the business logic in these automations back in the hands of the business, not in the hands of IT or a consulting firm. Obviously, we're happy to help, but the real value is going to be in you guys being enabled to do that, at the minimum, that like level 1 service yourselves. So thank you for your time. That is all I had prepared for today. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over for any questions, if there are any, or hand it back to Amy.
All right. Well, I don't actually see any questions that weren't answered. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Happy to answer those. Thank you all so much for attending. Thank you, Nick, for your presentation, and we hope everyone has a great day.